My name is Anna, and that morning was anything but peaceful. As the first wave of pain hit me, a sharp, stark reminder that our baby was on its way, I called out to my husband, Mark. "Mark, it's time," I gasped, clutching my swollen belly. He stumbled into the room, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. Okay, let's go," he muttered, helping me to my feet. But before we could take another step, his phone rang. It was his mother, Evelyn. Despite my increasingly intense contractions, Mark answered the phone. "Mom? Now?" He hesitated, glancing at me with an apologetic look. I couldn't believe it. My husband, the man who had promised to be by my side through thick and thin, was considering abandoning me at this crucial moment. "Mark, please," I pleaded. "We need to go to the hospital." He nodded distractedly, murmuring a response to his mother. "Yes, Mom, I know, but Anna is in labor." The conversation seemed endless. With each passing second, my discomfort grew, both physically and emotionally. I felt a betrayal building, a stark realization that I was not his priority. Finally, Mark ended the call, his expression torn. "Anna, I have to drop Mom first. She has her weekly art class." I stared at him, incredulous. "Are you serious? Your child is about to be born." "I'm sorry, Anna," he mumbled, pulling out his wallet. "Here, take this." He handed me a $20 bill as if it could somehow compensate for his absence. Before I could protest, he was gone, the sound of the car engine fading into the distance. Left alone, pain surging through me, I felt a wave of despair. Our marriage, once a canvas of love and mutual respect, now seemed like a forgotten sketch, overshadowed by Evelyn's overbearing presence. I had met Mark in college, a charming senior who won my heart with his kind words and gentle demeanor. Our relationship blossomed, and soon after graduation, we married. Those days now seemed like a distant memory, a stark contrast to the cold reality of my current predicament. Evelyn, Mark's mother, had always been a challenging figure in our lives. Initially, I tried to see past her harsh words, believing it to be typical mother-in-law behavior. But over time, her true nature became apparent. She was manipulative, always finding ways to wedge herself between Mark and me. I remember our first meeting. Her eyes had scanned me critically, her lips curling in distaste. "What's with your hair, dear? Trying a bit too hard, aren't we?" I had felt so small, so judged. Mark had tried to brush it off, claiming she was just nervous. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Her words were always laced with venom, her actions a clear indication of her desire to control every aspect of Mark's life. And now, as I stood alone in our living room, struggling with labor pains, I realized the extent of her hold over him. It was a revelation that stung sharply, a realization that I was secondary in my husband's life. As the pain intensified, a sense of urgency overcame me. I needed to get to the hospital, with or without Mark. I dialed a taxi, my hands trembling, tears streaming down my face. I was about to bring our child into the world, and I was doing it alone. The taxi arrived quickly, and as I stepped out of the house, I took one last look back. It was a bittersweet farewell to the life I thought I had, a life overshadowed by a woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to her son's undivided attention. In the back seat of the taxi, as we sped towards the hospital, I made a silent vow. I would be strong, not just for my baby, but for myself. I would no longer be a victim of Evelyn's manipulations or Mark's inability to stand up to her. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would reclaim my life and my dignity. As the hospital came into view, a sense of resolve settled over me. This was not the end, but a new beginning. A beginning where I would stand tall, a mother ready to face the world with her child. Life, I had learned, was full of surprises, some more bitter than others. As I lay in the hospital bed, awaiting the birth of my child, my mind wandered back to the early days with Mark and his mother, Evelyn. I had always known that Evelyn held a special place in Mark's life. She was, after all, a single mother who had raised him alone. But what I hadn't anticipated was the depth of her influence over him, a hold so strong it often left me feeling like an outsider in my own marriage. Our first meeting had been a disaster. I had spent hours preparing, eager to make a good impression, but from the moment Evelyn laid eyes on me, I knew I was fighting a losing battle. "What kind of girl dyes her hair such an outrageous color?" she had sneered, her eyes scanning my carefully styled hair. I had felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment, a sinking feeling in my stomach. Mark had hastily dyed my hair a more conservative shade the night before, hoping to please his mother. But it seemed nothing I did was good enough for Evelyn. Mark had always excused his mother's behavior. "She's just set in her ways," he would say, or "she means well, deep down." But as time went on, her thinly veiled insults and constant interference in our lives became harder to ignore. I remembered one particular evening, a dinner that had started off pleasantly enough. We were celebrating Mark's promotion at work, a momentous occasion. But Evelyn's presence had cast a shadow over our celebration. "You must be so proud of Mark," I had said, trying to make conversation. "Proud? Of what?" Evelyn had replied, her voice dripping with disdain. "A promotion in a job he only got because of his father's connections. I suppose it's an achievement for someone with such limited ambitions." I had watched, stunned, as Mark said nothing, his eyes fixed on his plate. It was moments like these that chipped away at my respect for him, his inability to stand up to his mother slowly eroding the love I had once felt. As my pregnancy progressed, Evelyn's hold on Mark seemed to tighten. She would call him at all hours, demanding his attention for the most trivial matters. And Mark, ever the dutiful son, would always comply. "You don't understand, Anna," he would say whenever I protested. "She's all alone. She needs me." "But what about me? What about our baby?" These were questions I stopped asking, knowing I would never get the answers I sought. And now, as I prepared to bring our child into the world, I realized how much I had lost. My marriage had become a shadow of what it once was, consumed by the overbearing presence of a woman who saw me as nothing more than a threat to her control over her son. As the nurses bustled around me, preparing for the delivery, I felt a sense of loneliness wash over me. I was about to become a mother, a role I had always dreamed of, but in that moment I felt more alone than ever. And yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was a flicker of hope. This child, my child, would be my salvation. A new beginning, a chance to break free from the chains of a toxic bond and start anew. As the first cries of my baby filled the room, I felt a strength rise within me, a strength I didn't know I had. I was a mother now, and nothing would ever come between me and my child. As I held my newborn baby in my arms, feeling the tiny heartbeat against my chest, I reflected on the journey that had led me to this solitary but profound moment. The early days of my marriage to Mark, filled with love and shared dreams, now seemed like a distant mirage. After our wedding, I had entered our marriage with a heart full of hope. Mark and I had moved into a cozy apartment, a space we eagerly turned into our little haven. But as the days turned into months, the cracks began to show, widening with each passing moment. Mark's mother, Evelyn, became an ever-present shadow in our lives. Her calls were frequent, her demands increasingly unreasonable. Each time the phone rang, my heart sank, knowing it would pull Mark away from me, from us. I remember one evening, Mark and I had planned a quiet dinner at home. It was rare for us to have time alone, and I had spent the afternoon preparing his favorite dish. But just as we were about to sit down, his phone rang. It was Evelyn, and she needed him. Her car had broken down, and she insisted Mark come to help her, despite my suggestion to call a roadside assistance service. "Anna, she's my mother. I can't leave her stranded," Mark had said, his voice tinged with frustration. "But what about us, Mark? What about our plans?" I had asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer, just grabbed his coat and left, leaving me alone with the dinner I had so lovingly prepared. That night, I ate alone, the silence of the apartment a stark reminder of my growing loneliness. As my pregnancy progressed, I hoped it would bring Mark closer, that the prospect of our own family would shift his priorities. But the opposite happened. Evelyn's calls became more frequent, her reasons for needing Mark more absurd. And Mark, trapped in a cycle of guilt and obligation, never said no. I tried to talk to him, to make him see how his actions were affecting our marriage, but my words fell on deaf ears. "She's alone, Anna. She has no one else," he would say, his eyes pleading for understanding. "But what about me? Wasn't I his family too?" These were questions I asked myself every night as I lay in bed, Mark often absent, attending to his mother's latest crisis. And then, the day my water broke, the day that should have been the happiest of our lives, Mark chose Evelyn over me, over our baby. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any of her harsh words or his broken promises. In the hospital, Cradling my baby, I made a decision. I would no longer be a bystander in my own life, watching as others dictated my happiness. I would stand up for myself, for my child. Mark had made his choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. As I gazed into the innocent eyes of my baby, I felt a resolve harden within me. I would leave Mark and his toxic bond with his mother. I would start afresh, build a life for me and my child, a life free of shadows and manipulation. My baby's soft cooing brought me back to the present, a gentle reminder of the new path that lay ahead. A path filled with challenges, no doubt, but also with the promise of freedom and a new beginning. As the first light of dawn broke through the hospital window, casting a warm glow over us, I knew that this was the start of something new. A journey of resilience and self-discovery, a journey where I would no longer be just Anna, but a mother, strong and undeterred. The day I was abandoned by my husband on the way to the hospital, my world shifted irreversibly. Lying in the hospital bed, cradling my newborn, I couldn't help but replay that day over and over in my mind. It started like any other day, except for the undercurrent of excitement and anticipation. The baby was due any day now, and every moment felt charged with the promise of new life. But when my water broke, that excitement turned to fear and urgency. Mark's reaction was a mix of panic and concern, but it was quickly overshadowed by his mother's timely interruption, the phone call that changed everything. Evelyn needed him, and despite the critical nature of our situation, Mark chose to respond to her call. I remember feeling a mix of disbelief and despair as he explained, his voice strained, "Anna, I promised to help Mom. She's waiting for me." "But Mark, I'm in labor. We need to go to the hospital now." My voice was a mixture of pain and pleading. He hesitated, torn, but then his resolve faltered. "I'm sorry, Anna. I'll be back as soon as I can. Here, take this for a taxi." He pressed a $20 bill into my hand, a paltry sum that felt like an insult in the enormity of the moment. As he drove away, leaving me alone and vulnerable on the verge of childbirth, I realized the bitter truth. My husband, the man I had loved and trusted, had chosen his mother over his wife and unborn child. The taxi ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and tears. I was alone, save for the sympathetic driver who tried his best to comfort me. His kindness was a small solace in the overwhelming sense of betrayal and abandonment I felt. In the hospital, as I labored to bring our child into the world, the absence of my husband was a gaping wound. The pain of childbirth was nothing compared to the heartache of his betrayal. But in that moment of intense vulnerability, I found an inner strength I didn't know I possessed. I was doing this alone, but I was doing it. With every contraction, every push, I was not only bringing new life into the world, but also birthing a new version of myself. When my baby finally arrived, the sound of his first cry was the sweetest music I had ever heard. As I held him in my arms, I knew that our journey together would be filled with challenges, but also with immeasurable love and joy. Mark's absence in those crucial hours spoke louder than any words he had ever said. It was a clear message that his loyalties lay elsewhere, not with the family we had created together. As I gazed down at my baby, a sense of determination settled over me. I would not let Mark's choices define us. We would move forward, just the two of us, and create a life filled with the love and stability that my child deserved. That day, I not only became a mother, but also made a vow to myself and my baby. We would no longer be secondary in someone else's life. We would be our own priority, our own family, and nothing would ever come between that. The first rays of morning light streamed through the hospital window, casting a gentle glow on the tiny face of my son. As I watched him sleep peacefully in my arms, a sense of clarity washed over me. I had crossed a threshold, stepping into a world where I was no longer just Anna, but a mother determined to forge a path filled with love and security for my child. The events of the previous day, with Mark's unfathomable decision to abandon me in my hour of need, still stung with fresh pain. Yet, as I looked at my son, I knew that this pain was not just an end but a beginning too. A beginning of a life where I was the sole architect of my destiny. I remembered waking up, still groggy from the exhaustion of childbirth, to find the room empty. There was no sign of Mark. The realization that he had not been there to witness the birth of our child, to share in the joy and awe of this miracle, was a sobering reminder of the reality I faced. As the morning progressed, my resolve strengthened. I knew I had to make decisions, not just for myself, but for the tiny life that depended on me. The first was to move out of the home I shared with Mark and to seek the comfort and support of my own family. When Mark finally arrived, late in the afternoon, his face etched with concern and guilt, it was too late. The sight of him, once a source of comfort, now only brought a sense of betrayal. "Anna, I'm so sorry. I should have been here," he began, his voice trembling. But I cut him off, my own voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Mark, you made your choice, and now I've made mine. I can't trust you to be there for us, not when it truly matters." The hurt in his eyes was evident, but the time for apologies and excuses had passed. As he looked at our son, a flicker of longing crossed his face, but I knew that longing was not enough. Can I hold him?" Mark asked hesitantly. I hesitated, torn between the desire to let him bond with his son and the need to protect my child from future hurt. But in the end, I handed our son to him, watching as Mark held him with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with his earlier abandonment. After a few moments, I took my son back, my decision firm. "Mark, I'll be going to my parents' house. We need space and time to figure things out." Mark nodded, the realization of the gravity of the situation dawning on him. "I understand. I'll give you whatever space you need." As I made arrangements for my discharge and subsequent move, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was taking control of my life, making choices that were right for me and my son. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it head-on. Leaving the hospital that day, with my son cradled in my arms, I stepped into the crisp air, a sense of freedom enveloping me. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I was not alone. I had my son, and together we would navigate this new world, a world where we were each other's priority. The days following my discharge from the hospital were a blend of overwhelming love for my son and the stark reality of my new life. Moving in with my parents brought a much-needed sense of security and support. As I navigated the uncharted waters of motherhood, their presence was a comforting constant in the turbulence of my emotional upheaval. Mark's absence in our lives was palpable, but with each passing day, I grew more resolute in my decision. The breach of trust and his subsequent failure to prioritize our family were wounds too deep to simply heal with time and apologies. However, the finality of our separation brought its own set of challenges. I initiated divorce proceedings, a decision that was as painful as it was necessary. Mark was stunned, his initial disbelief giving way to a reluctant acceptance. The man who had once vowed to stand by me in sickness and in health now stood at a distance, a silent spectator to the dissolution of our marriage. The legal process was tedious, but amid the paperwork and meetings, I found a strength I didn't know I had. I was not just fighting for myself, but for my son, too. The settlement included a claim for damages, a recognition of the emotional and physical toll Mark's actions had taken on me, particularly during the vulnerable period of my pregnancy. As I juggled the demands of legal battles and new motherhood, word of our separation began to spread. Mark's mother, Evelyn, tried to reach out to me, but I firmly kept my distance. The toxic bond she shared with Mark had been a major catalyst in our downfall, and I was determined to shield myself and my son from further manipulation. In the midst of this, karma seemed to find its way to Mark. His reputation, once that of a loving husband and doting father, was now tarnished. His colleagues and friends who had once admired his commitment to his family now viewed him with a mix of pity and disdain. The man who had prided himself on his familial values had fallen from grace, and the community's judgment was swift and unforgiving. As for me, I found solace in the little moments with my son. His first smile, the way his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, the soft coos as he drifted to sleep. These were the joys that filled my days and gave me the strength to keep moving forward. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my life. My parents, ever supportive, were my pillars of strength, and my son was my beacon of hope. The journey was not easy, but it was filled with small victories and immense growth. Looking back, I realized how far I had come. From a wife overshadowed by the influence of a controlling mother-in-law to a single mother standing on her own 2 feet, the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. And as I lay my son down to sleep each night, I whispered promises of a better future. A future where we were not defined by the past, but shaped by the love and resilience that had brought us this far. Years have passed since the day I made the decision to walk away from a marriage that had become a shadow of what it once promised. As I sit in the quiet of my parents' garden watching my son play, his laughter a balm to my soul, I reflect on the journey that brought us here. The path was not easy. There were moments of doubt, nights filled with tears, and days when the weight of single motherhood felt overwhelming. But each challenge also brought with it a lesson in strength, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Mark, once a central figure in my life, now seemed like a distant memory. His attempts to reconcile, initially frequent and desperate, had slowly dwindled over time. The last I heard, he had moved to another city, a consequence of the life he had chosen. His mother, Evelyn, remained a part of his life, but their bond, once the cause of so much pain in mine, was no longer my concern. My son, now a vibrant and curious little boy, was the source of my strength. His presence reminded me daily of the decision I made, not just for myself, but for him. A decision to break free from a toxic environment and provide him with a life filled with love, stability, and the freedom to grow. My parents, ever supportive, had been my rock through it all. They had embraced their roles as grandparents with a love and dedication that filled our home with warmth. Their support had been invaluable, giving me the space and strength to find my footing as a single mother. As I watched my son, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in the person I had become. The journey had reshaped me, not just as a mother but as an individual. I had found a sense of purpose, a clarity that only comes from facing and overcoming life's trials. Life, I realized, is a tapestry of experiences, each thread woven with moments of joy and sorrow, victories and defeats. My story was no different. It was a story of love lost and found, of betrayal and forgiveness, of falling down and rising up stronger. In this moment of reflection, I knew that the road ahead would have its own set of challenges. But I also knew that I was no longer the woman who once felt helpless in the face of adversity. I was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the garden, I called out to my son. He ran to me, his face alight with the simple joy of childhood. And in his embrace, I found not just the love of a child, but the promise of a future, filled with hope and endless possibilities. Life had come full circle, and as I held my son close, I knew that this was just the beginning. A beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where we were the protagonists of our own story, a story of triumph and resilience.
Oh, indeed? Is it true that you've acquired a house? If so, I'd be interested in living with you. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law started uttering such an absurd proposition over the phone. She must have caught wind of our recent home purchase from my husband. I could discern my sister-in-law's amused chuckles in the background. Does she believe her laughter can go unnoticed? Honestly, I have no desire to reside with my mother-in-law and the others. I thought my husband shared the same sentiment. However, the fact that they've been informed about our new house, could it be that they're assuming we'll be living together? The idea that my beloved husband might be in cahoots with them fills me with a bit of apprehension. Yet I have no intention of yielding to their wishes. Are they trying to manipulate me? If that's their game, I'll reverse the roles. Reflecting on all my past tribulations, I pledge revenge against them. I am Kate Thompson, 30 years old, working as an ordinary employee at a major financial corporation. I married my husband, Joe, 3 years ago, and though we don't have children yet, there's a valid reason for that, a decision we both took seriously. Joe and I are fully committed to our careers, toiling daily with the aim of advancing. Once our professional lives stabilize, we plan to build our own home and create a stable environment for raising children. We've agreed to revisit the topic of having kids once our careers settle down. This was a decision we made earnestly, sharing our genuine feelings and thoughts. We do aspire to have children eventually. And now, as we prepare for that, I find myself recalling all my past struggles. Then one day, I successfully executed a well-planned project at work, and my promotion was officially confirmed. While my salary was already sufficient, the promotion brought even more comfort to our lives. On the other hand, Joe, although not promoted, received a substantial salary increase due to his years of service. With both our incomes on the rise, I felt it was time to turn our long-held dream into reality. So, Joe, I want to talk to you. Over the past year, both of us have had stable incomes. I think it might be time to consider getting our own home. What do you think? Oh, is it time already? From his excited voice, I could tell Joe was thrilled. Actually, I've been thinking about it too. But since I haven't been promoted yet, I felt a bit hesitant to bring it up. Don't worry about that. It's not like only one of us needs to earn money. I was thinking it might be okay to build our home in my name. Really, well, you two earn more now. If you're okay with it, let's build our home in your name. All right, let's proceed with that. Let's go see some model houses on our next day off. Sounds great. Let's go. We shouldn't miss this opportunity. I really feel grateful for choosing Joe. At times like this, as we share the same values. The following week, we made an appointment to view model homes. As planned, we looked at various types of houses, expanding our vision for our own home. On weekends, we began creating simple floor plans together, researching online. During the recent visit to a construction company, they suggested that instead of leaving everything to them, it's better if we create our own image for a more satisfying home. So Joe and I started building that image. However, neither of us has much knowledge of architecture or design. Even with research, it takes time to put it into practice. While taking breaks, we continued working, and then the doorbell rang. I thought it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, my mother-in-law was standing there unexpectedly. Mother, what brings you here so suddenly like this? My mother-in-law sometimes visits our place without notice. She glared at me and, without a word, took off her shoes and went into the house on her own. I'm here, Joe. Surprised by his mother's call, Joe showed a startled reaction. Did you have some business around here? To Joe's question, his mother looked a bit perplexed. Yes, I told Kate about it over the phone a little while ago, but it seems Joe didn't know. I see, maybe Kate forgot to tell me. Seems like it. Kate, even though she's still young, has a terrible memory. That's not true, Mom. It's not forgetfulness. Kate is incredibly busy with work, and at the same time, she takes care of the household. Her mind is always full of things to do. You're such a kind boy, Joe. If your late father were here, he definitely wouldn't have forgiven that. I really respect Kate from the bottom of my heart. So, Mom, why did you come here today? To Joe's question, his mother smiled contentedly. Then she slowly took out a travel brochure from her bag, spread a page with a post-it note on the table, and showed it. Listen, Joe, I've always wanted to go to Niagara Falls. Won't you take me, please? My mother-in-law began to say such things excitedly out of the blue. Caught off guard by the sudden request, both Joe and I were left staring at her, mouths agape. My mother-in-law, relentless, kept pressing Joe, who was clearly flustered. Come on, Joe, you agree, right? Think of it as a way to show filial piety. Wait a minute, Mom, I'm in trouble if you suddenly say you want to go on a trip, though you can come too. Actually, I was thinking of going with Claire, but if Joe wants to go, I'm delighted to turn it into a family trip. Claire is Joe's sister. What are you talking about? Kate is here, and I can't get time off from work. But it's strange for me to pay for a trip for you and my sister, right? Not strange at all. Spending money for the family is a wonderful thing. Don't you think so, Kate? Suddenly turning to me, my mother-in-law sought my agreement. Though shaken, I firmly expressed my opinion to her. Using one's own money for family isn't bad, but I think imposing it on others is different. What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm trying to extort travel expenses from Joe? I didn't mean to say it in such a harsh way, but listening to you, it sounded like you just wanted us to pay for the trip, Kate. That's terrible. I had no such intention, but you're making me out to be the villain in front of Joe. I'm so shocked. That's not. I didn't mean to call you a villain. I just answered honestly to what was asked. Okay. No need for excuses. Kate, why are you so heartless? You must not like me, do you? My mother-in-law, visibly upset, glared at me with icy cold eyes. It always turns out like this when she comes over. She always finds some reason to demand money and then squanders it with Claire, Joe's sister. Spending money for the family sounds nice, but what my mother-in-law does is practically extortion. The situation is entirely different when Joe gives them money out of kindness, no matter that they're family. I never really liked Joe's brazen mother and sister. According to Joe, his mother and sister became so selfish after his father passed away. Joe's father died when he was in high school, and since then, they have lived as a trio. With his strict father alive, he watched over the finances. But with his departure, there was no one to stop them, and they even freely spent the life insurance money. Also, since Claire works part-time, not as a full-time employee, her salary is low, and their life is always on the edge. So this is why she regularly visits our house, making excuses like life is tough or I want to relax and travel somewhere to extort money from Joe. Before marrying Joe, it seemed he was at the mercy of his mother and her demands. After his father's death, a sense of dependence for being cared for by his mother had bound Joe. However, since marrying me, Joe seems to be gradually realizing their true nature. Even when repeatedly asked for money recently, he's been trying hard to refuse. For Joe, that's quite a growth. Moreover, he has recently become able to speak back firmly to his mother. To my mother-in-law's spiteful words like, "You don't like me, do you?" Or "Why should I, for such an uncharming daughter-in-law?" Joe responded clearly, "Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you can speak badly of Kate. Didn't Kate just answer what you asked her?" "Mom, you're taking Kate's side." "What are you talking about?" "I think you're in the wrong here, Mom. That's so unfair. Surely, Kate must have poisoned your mind against me. Poor thing, you were such a kind child before. We got married. I'm telling you, that's not it. I'm saying this because I think so." Joe's firm response surprised my mother-in-law, who was not used to being talked back to like that. With a frustrated look, biting her lower lip, she said, "Fine," and left. "Kate, I'm sorry I always make you feel uncomfortable." "No, it's okay. You stood up for us this time. Once we build our own home, we'll be further away. Let's not interact with Mom and them then." "Yeah, that would be a relief if you're okay with it, Joe." I'm grateful the place we are considering for our new home is quite far from our current apartment, improving the convenience to both of our workplaces. Our current apartment is about 5 train stations away from Joe's parental home, but the new house will be 3 times farther and require transfers. The route from the station is also complex, so if we don't give them the address, they won't be able to find our new home. It's a good chance to cleanly break off our relationship with my mother-in-law. Later, we submitted our imagined floor plan to the construction company, and the construction started 2 months later. After about half a year, our $500,000 dream home was completed. We managed to squeeze some time from our busy work schedules to pack a few days before the move. I received a call from my mother-in-law on my smartphone. Busy packing, I turned on the speaker and answered the phone. "Hello," I said, and my mother-in-law started speaking in an unusually high-pitched voice. "Kate, when are you moving? You bought a house, right? I want to live with you." Suddenly, on the phone, my mother-in-law began to say such an outrageous thing. She must have heard about our new home purchase from Joe. I could hear Claire, my sister-in-law, chuckling in the background. "That's great. We can make Kate work for us every day, Mom. You came up with a good idea." Do they think their words aren't reaching me? It's clear they plan to piggyback on our move. I imagine them planning to use me for an easy life. Honestly, I have no intention of living with them. I thought Joe felt the same. But telling them about the new house, could it be that they're assuming we'll live together? The thought that my beloved Joe might be in league with them fills me with a bit of fear. But I have no intention of letting them have their way. They're probably trying to use me, right? If that's the case, I'll turn it around and use them. I told them the day of our move. Then my mother-in-law and Claire said, "We'll come to the apartment in the afternoon on that day. Take us with you in the car and arrange the movers for us too." They hung up after making their demands. But of course, I have no intention of complying. For now, I'll check the facts with Joe. As I was about to go and tell Joe this, he was already standing behind me. "Joe, you were there. I came to say we should take a break." But was that Mom on the phone just now? Ah, yes. I was going to talk to you about it too. Why did you tell your mother about our new home? It's not like that. Actually, when Mom came over last time, she seems to have seen the floor plan of our new house. She kept pestering me about it every day, so I just... Kate, I'm really sorry. I see. So you don't intend to live with your mother, right? Of course not. After hearing that phone call, I'm even thinking it's better to cut ties with her. Joe's expression was filled with more anger than ever. It was the first time I had seen him this angry. From what Joe told me, my mother-in-law had seen the layout of our new home and was convinced it was a spacious house. She had pretended to be interested and called Joe repeatedly, asking him about the number of rooms and details of the facilities. But it seems that Joe is on my side, which relieved me. Then there's no problem at all. This made me determined to get my revenge on my mother-in-law. I've had enough of her saying whatever she wants, but it's goodbye to that now. I'll make sure to settle this properly. And so the day of the move arrived. Joe and I had the movers transport our things in the morning and headed to our new home in our car. By the time we finished moving everything, it was already past 1:00 p.m. Checking our phones while taking a break, we saw dozens of missed calls from my mother-in-law. She called me too, Joe said, sounding weary. Then my mother-in-law called again. I answered the phone with the speaker still on. Hello? Hello, Kate, where are you? I told you I'd be at the apartment in the afternoon, didn't I? Yes, you did say that. So what can I do for you? What do you mean you didn't arrange for the movers? I've been waiting at home, and not a single truck has shown up, so I had to go to your apartment myself. Is that so? Well, that's too bad. You know I didn't arrange for any movers. What? That's not the agreement. Where is your new house? Clearly dumbfounded, my mother-in-law probably thought that as long as Joe was there, she could always have her way. But Joe is different now. He's my precious Ellie. Determined to cut off the bad ties with his family, I spoke firmly. Just to let you know, neither Joe nor I have any intention of living with the two of you from now on. Please don't involve yourselves in our lives. What are you saying? Your opinion doesn't matter. It's up to Joe to decide. At least tell me where the new house is right now. Huh? How are you going to get here without even knowing the address? This house is in my name. I have the right to decide who lives here. If you two just barge in, it's trespassing, and I'll sue you right away. What? Trespassing? How rude to say that about your husband's family. At that point, Joe spoke up in a deathly cold voice. Family? My father, who was a family member, is already gone, isn't he? What are you saying, Joe? After hearing that last phone call, I'm utterly fed up with you two. Just having a blood relation with you is embarrassing. From now on, my family is only Dav and Kate. I no longer consider you two as my family. Wait, Joe, don't say such things. Don't bother us again, got it? With that, Joe hung up without waiting for her reply. He swiftly set his phone to block her calls. Hey, Joe, are you really okay with this? I asked. Yeah, I finally realized that Mom was just using me to her advantage. I feel completely relieved now, Joe said, looking truly refreshed, sincerely believing what he said. That's how we, as a couple, managed to cut off the bad ties with my mother-in-law and sister. Afterwards, they had to change their lifestyle drastically as Joe stopped supporting them completely. Without any contact with Joe, they lost their fallback option. Later on, my sister-in-law's part-time income wasn't enough, and my mother-in-law had to start working part-time as well. Being a housewife for so long, she wasn't used to the working environment and was clumsy, often being disliked at her workplace. Meanwhile, we live a peaceful life in our new home with no sudden visits from my mother-in-law anymore. We are truly stress-free. I'm endlessly grateful to Joe for believing in me and cutting ties with his toxic blood relatives. We might face various challenges in the future, but even then, I trust Joe, and we will support each other and walk through life together. I had envisioned a life in this house, just my mother and me until my husband, Todd, unexpectedly announced otherwise. The surprise left me in disbelief as he declared, "I'll handle all the monthly expenses, though I need you to leave," firmly raising her voice. I was taken aback and bewildered by their sudden decision. The motives behind their actions only became clearer when my mother-in-law completed the condominium contractor's name change. My name is Summer, and at 34 years old, I lead a busy life. My father, who ran a small-town workshop, styled this name upon me due to my birth during the summer season. While it may seem basic, it carries my late father's deep love. His polishing skills were renowned in the industry, and despite tough times, I cherished the moments playing in the workshop as a child. However, the workshop faced financial difficulties, leading to my father's tragic end in the back of the shop during my elementary school years. To shield me, my mother and I left town to start a discreet life elsewhere. Unfortunately, the years of hardship took a toll on my mother's health, and she passed away during my high school years. Despite the despair, I channeled the courage to face life head-on, driven by an inner passion to showcase my father's skills to future generations. Working tirelessly, I managed to graduate high school with scholarship support, juggling numerous part-time jobs to afford daily expenses while studying engineering at the local public university. During my university days, I encountered Todd, a friendly young man who recognized and admired my skills. Unlike many others, he never looked down on me for being a woman, fueling my determination. After graduating, we began living together, sharing our lives. Todd efficiently managed household chores, providing immense support, especially on busy work days. 6 years later, at 28, I contemplated reviving my father's small-town workshop, with Todd wholeheartedly supporting my dream. As we discussed the possibility of marriage frequently over these 6 years, my lifelong dream seemed poised to become a reality. However, my primary focus was on rebuilding my father's workshop before considering marriage. Todd respected this wish and patiently waited to raise funds. I opted for crowdfunding, leveraging my position as a female engineer. I incorporated the uniqueness of my story into the advertising campaign, aligning with the societal shift towards increased support for women. Carefully planning and persistently securing funding and the right personnel. After 4 years of effort, I successfully revived the town workshop. Mindful of the financial struggles the old workshop faced, I introduced state-of-the-art equipment and gave the factory a modern and sophisticated design. By establishing facilities and systems conducive to women, I aimed to create a workplace that was both productive and female-friendly. These efforts quickly elevated the workshop's status to top tier within the industry. While some might perceive my success as luck, it was, in fact, the result of numerous challenges and tireless efforts. Todd, my university partner, knew this best. However, Todd's career faced challenges, and while his colleagues progressed, he remained a rank-and-file employee. Growing frustrated, he started expressing his dissatisfaction, saying coldly, "You're really lucky to have succeeded. There must be someone better for you than me, right?" I repeatedly reassured him that my success wouldn't have been possible without his unwavering support. I genuinely believed his involvement in my life and career was indispensable. To express my deep gratitude and love, I proposed marriage. I valued his special presence, pure and warm-hearted sensitivity, bringing happiness to my everyday life. Despite finding great comfort and solace in his presence, I began noticing changes in his heart over the 10 years since we became adults. My hope was to dispel these insecurities through marriage. Upon deciding to marry, we rushed to inform our families. Contrary to my expectations, Todd's family home was an old, decaying wooden house that raised concerns about its stability. When Todd's mother first saw me, she remarked, "You're the daughter of the wealthy business owner they often talk about," reflecting my past fundraising and media exposure in the pursuit of success. I had emphasized the importance of first impressions, but the reality of Todd's family background differed from my expectations. I dedicated considerable time and effort to my attire and appearance, aiming for a suitable impression. However, from my mother-in-law's perspective, my outfit might have appeared flashy and excessive. She started speaking in a sarcastic tone, implying that I owed my appearance to Todd's assistance. despite feeling grateful. I sensed tension as I entered their quite old house. Todd seemed to have something on his mind but remained silent. His father, in tattered clothes and with a restless demeanor, reflected the atmosphere of the home. Apologizing for the state of their house, he acknowledged its issues and conveyed that it might differ from the appearance of a wealthy household. Trying to calm myself, I internally took several deep breaths. Each time I made a casual remark, Todd's parents responded with comments about how rich people have different ways of thinking and values than common people like us, making genuine conversation difficult. Back at home, I asked Todd about his parents' views on wealth, and he shared surprising facts. Since childhood, he was taught that fancy apartment buildings were probably built on wrongdoing and wealthy people engaged in shady dealings. They were believed to lack understanding of others' feelings or hardships, and Todd was advised to avoid befriending children from wealthy families. Although I hadn't grown up in a wealthy family myself, I found it intriguing to understand the roots of his parents' strong feelings. Even afterward, Todd's parents disapproved of our relationship. His mother often expressed concern about me making him do too much, while his father advised him not to let married life be completely dominated by his wife. These sentiments seemed to contribute to Todd's declining self-esteem. Behind my successful career was a desire to fulfill my late father's dream, not a wish to look down on others or use them. Despite Todd previously discussing this with his parents, my social success left a lasting impression on them. Attempting to improve our relationship, I communicated and tried to understand them multiple times. However, no matter how much goodwill I showed, Todd's father approached me with bias, saying, "This is how rich people think." Their reactions gradually closed off my heart. Meanwhile, as Todd visited his family more frequently due to his father's deteriorating health, we started distancing ourselves, even though we were married and living together. About 2 years later, he suddenly announced that he had decided to quit his job because he was too busy with things at home. I was infuriated that Todd made such a significant decision without discussing it with me first. At that point, our relationship had deteriorated into a mere formality, lacking meaningful and sincere communication. He claimed to be busy with housework, but in reality, he frequently visited casinos and racetracks. When I confronted him about his actions, Todd dismissively suggested hiring a professional housekeeper, stating that he wasn't my servant and we had enough money to cover the expense. His words left me deeply shocked and at a loss for a response. Around that time, Todd's father's health worsened, and he passed away. 2 months after receiving this news, when mother-in-law and Todd visited my house, he unexpectedly declared, "I plan to live in this house with my mother, just the two of us," taken aback by this sudden statement. I stood there speechless. Todd went on to say, "I will pay the monthly rent, so I want you to leave." Shocked by this demand, I could only ask, "Wait a minute, are you really able to pay the rent, Todd?" Instead of a reasonable response, my mother-in-law yelled at me, expressing her anger and stating that she couldn't forgive me for belittling them. Todd, dissatisfied, sighed deeply, proclaiming that he wouldn't tolerate being bossed around anymore and intended to live life on his terms. Surprised by their intense attitude, I momentarily lost my words. Reflecting on their past actions and words, I realized that dealing with them would be extremely challenging. I responded firmly, "I understand. I will leave this house next month." Satisfied, my mother-in-law pushed for an even quicker departure, demanding, "Can't you just get the hell out of here and leave next week?" Being ready for my new life and having already arranged for my stuff to be delivered to my new house, her abrupt demands puzzled me, considering I had just decided to leave. Unable to comprehend her reasoning or course of action, I hesitated in response. My mother-in-law raised her voice even more, asserting, "Someone as wealthy as you should leave them, moving to professionals, right?" She repeated a sarcastic phrase implying that she viewed the wealthy as something special or different. Initially, I considered it proper for them to move to a new place, since I was the one who contracted for the house. However, my mother-in-law continued to assert strongly, "This house belongs to Todd, no matter how much you earn. I won't allow you to hide that fact." Behind her words, I sensed a message that my higher income shouldn't make me feel superior to Todd. Looking at Todd's changed and gloomy expression, I questioned why I had invested so much time in such a person. In this unbearable situation, where living with them seemed insufferable and I wanted to avoid sharing the same space, breathing the same air, I concluded that it was time to seriously consider divorce. Understood. This weekend, I'll proceed with the moving arrangements, handling all necessary document changes and procedures. When I responded in a soft tone, Todd and his mother exchanged glances, smirking triumphantly, as if a long battle had ended and they had finally won. Immediately, I began searching for vacancies in apartments and condos, also looking for a reliable moving company amidst my busy days, including work-related business trips. Returning home, I found Todd deep in sleep, seemingly ignoring my existence. On the weekend, he calmly signed the divorce papers without displaying any emotion. Meanwhile, his mother was receiving explanations from the real estate agent about the rental agreement and signing the contract. I was particularly concerned about whether she truly understood the high rent of $66,000 after completing all the procedures. I found myself walking alone toward a new place with a high-rise condo behind me. The new apartment, a one-bedroom with secure surroundings, was perfect for me living alone. During the move, I decided to discard many unnecessary things, clearing both my run and my mind for a fresh start. Decorating the space to my liking was an enjoyable time for me, gradually immersing myself in the new lifestyle. Thoughts of Todd and his family started to fade, although I couldn't completely erase them from my mind. Reflecting on the memories with Todd and the challenging times we had overcome together, I never imagined our relationship would end this way, especially during our university days when we struggled financially. We supported each other's livelihood. The strain that developed over time was deep and immeasurable. However, I later came across shocking information when I coincidentally reunited with a university friend. She told me rumors of Todd floating around in city clubs. Also, a former neighbor from where I used to live mentioned seeing my ex-mother-in-law frequently entering and exiting a luxury foreign car. They described them wearing unfamiliar luxurious fur clothes and speaking completely differently than before. Hearing about their lavish lifestyle, I couldn't believe they once looked down on the wealthy, particularly after I had distanced myself from that life. I saw how much they had transformed. Then, unexpectedly, 2 months later, I received a call from Todd. "I really need your help." His voice conveyed a level of desperation I had never heard before. I had not expected to hear from him in such a manner after our one-sided relationship ended. "Actually, we've gotten ourselves into some unexpected trouble." What exactly happened? Todd's response indicated that the events had begun 3 months prior. He was shocked to learn the astonishing truth through a call from his mother. "I hit the jackpot in the lottery. Can you believe $30 million? She had apparently been buying lottery tickets in the past, and this time she had won an amount beyond her wildest dreams. "Is that really true, or is it a joke?" Todd asked her to confirm after checking the lottery numbers multiple times herself. The ex-mother-in-law assured, "There's no mistake. I checked it over and over. We are so unbelievably rich now. Now we can face those upper-class people with no problem. Truly, God has blessed us," she spoke with elation, lifting her spirits. Moved by these words, Todd was in tears, and his mother added, "With this amazing stroke of luck, you can escape from that woman's clutches. Have you heard? She seems to be frolicking around with some young guy now. Such a woman should be kept at a distance." These words pushed Todd further, and his pent-up anger and frustration boiled over. "Now that we've acquired wealth, I won't be controlled by her. We won't have anything to do with her anymore," he declared with a trembling voice, informing me of our disconnection. It became evident that during these events, a common goal had emerged between them: to completely exclude me. Subsequently, they began a lavish lifestyle in a downtown luxury condo, seemingly spending extravagantly every day. Todd used his savings liberally, and the ex-mother-in-law spent her late husband's inheritance without any reservations. Excited, they decided to go to the nearest bank to cash in the lottery ticket. However, at the bank, they faced a shocking truth. The lottery ticket they brought was from the previous year. Disbelief and dismay spread across their faces. It turned out the ex-mother-in-law had been comparing last year's lottery ticket with this year's winning numbers. Amidst this commotion, there was a deep-seated fear that somehow I would take their wealth from them. Surprised upon hearing their story, I was at a loss for words. That's truly unfortunate and sad. I conveyed my sympathy. Just as I was about to end the call, Todd spoke up again, asking, "But we should have a right to alimony, right?" Continuing to claim without any basis, he added, "You were cheating, right? On that fact alone, we should be able to claim alimony." Explaining his situation, Todd felt stressed about the house and believed he had the right to demand alimony. However, it was clear in my memory that Todd had quit his job on his own accord. My emotions surged, and I couldn't tolerate such baseless claims. "I can't believe you would say such a thing, you sleazy man. Are you for real?" I raised my voice involuntarily. In this moment, my usual calm judgment and strong resilience frayed. Perhaps sensing my anger, I could feel Todd's surprise and confusion over the phone. "Truly, it's me who should be seeking alimony. You only think about yourself, heartlessly kicking me out. Always that want-to-be-rich spiel. I heard it so many times. Why do you make your mother complain so much?" I can't tolerate this attitude of just being jealous without making any effort, I continued with an emotional outburst. After my emotional outburst, there was a moment of silence. Then I felt a sense of clarity and hung up the phone. Their mistake with the lottery ticket astounded me, but now it was none of my business. Whatever fate they met was irrelevant to me. Days later, as I walked in front of my factory, I saw my ex-mother-in-law in a visibly deplorable state. She appeared before me and began to prostrate. "Please help me. We can't afford to return the $66,000. Please come back and be a part of our family again." That should have been clearly written in the documents. Why didn't he check them thoroughly? Didn't you understand how serious it all was? "And about that lottery ticket," I murmured slowly, choosing my words carefully. "Will you truly abandon a mother and child struck by such misfortune?" After a pause, I shook my head calmly and said, "I believe that luck, in many cases, is something you forge for yourself despite hardships. I have strived to carve out my own destiny. How much of that mindset did you have?" My words left her with a surprised and somewhat regretful expression. Struggling to find a response, I walked past her and started walking in the direction of the building. After a short walk, I turned around to find my former mother-in-law still standing there. But I never looked back again and kept walking, focused on the path ahead. As expected, Todd and his mother were eventually evicted from the luxury condo. They chose an old wooden shack as their new dwelling, having spent all their savings. Now they spend their days working various part-time jobs to support themselves and save for the future. Over the following years, I dedicated myself to my work, and my factory grew far beyond its original small-town scale. I secured funds to purchase a larger plot of land nearby and established a new state-of-the-art factory there. This newly built facility was designed with the comfort of the entire family in mind, complete with maternity leave and childcare facilities for employees. Although my parents were not able to witness this success in person, every time I see a smiling couple with their children visiting the factory, I remember myself as a child and feel a deep sense of relief and happiness at the sight of them. About the $3 million, I've made a decision to divide it between my mom and me. This decision came shortly after my father's funeral. Jack, after perusing the inheritance documents without seeking permission, remarked to me, "Kelly, don't be too greedy." Oh, finally I can quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man. Doddering old man? Are you talking about my dad? I inadvertently blurted out, disregarding my confusion. Jack and my mother-in-law enthusiastically discussed plans to buy a new car and go shopping. Faced with this unexpected turn of events, I could no longer contain my emotions. I was on the brink of exploding. Burdened with household chores, asked for money, and to top it off, they insulted my father. I didn't want to live with Jack and my mother-in-law anymore. Suppressing my anger, I forced a smile and replied, Sure, feel free to use the money as you and my mother-in-law please. I am Kelly Cohan, a 38-year-old housewife working alongside my husband. My parents were doctors who ran a well-reputed clinic in our hometown. As an only child, I was showered with love. After graduating from the School of Pharmacy, I secured a job at a major pharmaceutical company. Although my parents were disappointed I didn't become a doctor, they respected my decision. 10 years ago, my mother unexpectedly died in an accident, leaving me and my father devastated. During those difficult times, Jack, then my boyfriend, supported me. We met through a mutual friend, and 2 years after my mother's passing, Jack proposed. Jack was an ordinary salaryman in the food and beverage industry. Despite earning significantly more, I believed we could overcome any difficulty and be a happy couple. My father was overjoyed when I told him about our engagement. I've heard how Jack supported you, Kelly. Thank you so much. Please continue to take care of her, he said. Facing my father, Jack stood straight and promised, I will make her happy. Standing next to Jack, I was enveloped in feelings of happiness. The following week, we went to Jack's family home to announce our marriage. His mother, with flashy makeup and divorced from Jack's father, evaluated me rudely. Marriage, huh? You're Jack's choice, are you? Isn't she a plain choice for you? And she's older, right? Wouldn't a younger and prettier girl be better for you? Jack quickly retorted, Mom, you know M Pharmaceuticals, right? Kelly works there. Her father is a doctor and runs his practice. I expected Jack to praise my character, but instead, he emphasized the financial advantages. Hearing this, his mother's expression changed to one of satisfaction. Oh, Jack, you should have told me such important things earlier. That changes everything. I happily approve of the marriage. Nice to meet you, Kelly. Thank you. After gaining approval for our marriage from Jack's mother, Jack was overjoyed. However, I couldn't shake off a sense of unease. Despite things going smoothly and our decision to get married, when we were about to register our marriage, my father, a doctor and real estate investor, gifted me an apartment in a luxury building in New York City. I told Jack, Dad has given me this apartment as a wedding gift, but it's our new home. Let's live here happily and peacefully together. Jack smiled happily, and thus our married life began. However, after getting married, I realized something unsettling. Jack, who had lived with his parents until then, was almost incapable of doing household chores. He couldn't cook, didn't know how to use the washing machine, and showed no interest in learning. He would leave his garbage scattered around, not bothering to throw it away. While I wanted to diligently share household responsibilities, Jack's careless attitude increased my dissatisfaction. In the first year of marriage, I took on all the household responsibilities despite some complaints, given that we were still in the honeymoon phase. But with the exhaustion from work and struggling to keep up with chores, I reached my limit in our second year, deciding to have a serious talk with Jack about sharing household duties. I bravely expressed my dissatisfaction. To my dismay, Jack responded without gratitude or reflection, saying, I'm tired from work too. You're much better at chores than I am, right? It's better if you do them since I'm not good at it. Dismissed just like that. Jack hardly helped with the chores, and I continued to bear the brunt of our household responsibilities. But that wasn't the only problem. After marrying Jack, I discovered his mother also had some peculiar ideas. Jack wasn't very interested in seasonal events, so I decided to send a quality scarf and carnations to his mother for Mother's Day. Despite choosing a nice scarf from a department store, his mother called me, sounding displeased. She criticized the scarf, saying it wasn't from a famous brand and was absurd to send such a no-name item. I tried to explain its quality, but she wouldn't listen, insisting she wanted items from a very famous luxury brand. Stunned, I reported this to Jack when he returned home. But instead of empathizing, he said, What? It's just do as she said. Jack didn't take my side. And from then on, we started giving her cash as she demanded. Moreover, by our 5th year of marriage, she began visiting our home frequently, always finding reasons to ask for money. Jack, without any complaints, would always smile and give money to his mother, even though I had a job. Jack's income was limited and small, making our daily life just barely manageable. Desperation led me to dip into our savings to cut living expenses. Despite my frustrations, I knew Jack cherished his mother, and she was an important person to me, having supported me during tough times. She's the mother of someone important to me, and with that thought, I endured. Now, in our 8th year of marriage, I continue to handle all the household chores and keep giving money to my mother-in-law. One day during this routine, my father, whom I hadn't seen in a while, unexpectedly called me. The story he shared during our rare meeting was shockingly unexpected. He revealed that he was suffering from terminal cancer, and treatment was no longer possible. Overwhelmed with shock, tears spilled from my eyes. My father gently stroked my head, just as he did when I was a child, saying, "Kelly, this is fate. Let's accept it quietly." I questioned Dad, "Why even you?" Thus, my days became a juggling act of work, household duties, and now visits to my father's hospital. While work allowed some flexibility, managing the household was not easy. When I told Jack I would be caring for my father, he showed no reaction or willingness to help. "Well, it's tough with your father's sudden condition. Please do your best," was the only thing Jack said. He visited my father in the hospital only once. I was so preoccupied with my father's care that I had no time to spare for Jack. If I had time to worry about Jack, I wanted to prioritize my father. One day, as my father lay in his hospital bed, he suddenly asked me, "Kelly, how is your marriage with Jack going?" Caught off guard, I found myself thinking about Jack's attitude at home and his mother's behavior. I couldn't answer properly. Seeing my hesitation, my father seemed to understand and spoke to me, "Kelly, you don't have to endure. Think about your happiness. Don't worry, you won't have any hardships after I'm gone." I couldn't hold back my tears and wept, and my father silently and firmly held my hand. 3 months later, the inevitable moment arrived. My father passed away quietly. Engulfed in immense sorrow, I started arranging the funeral. Jack, however, showed no interest in my grief and didn't help with any preparations. Despite this, I was too busy with the funeral arrangements to pay much attention to Jack. Many friends and acquaintances attended my father's funeral, making it a heartfelt farewell. Even the indifferent Jack and his mother attended. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer about my father's inheritance. I arranged a meeting with the lawyer and listened to the explanation. The information was all new and quite surprising. After deducting taxes like inheritance tax, my father's estate amounted to over $3 million. He had not only earned income as a doctor but also made real estate investments, leaving behind such a vast fortune, all of it to be inherited by me, his only daughter. Wrapped in surprise and gratitude, yet trembling at the thought of handling such a huge amount of money, I proceeded with the inheritance process. After returning home, I spread out the documents received from the lawyer on my desk, reading through them. Exhaustion overwhelmed me, and I ended up dozing off on the sofa for a short while. When I awoke, I heard the cheerful voices of Jack and his mother from afar. "Huh, Jack and mother too. When did you come?" As I spoke, Jack approached me with a beaming smile, saying, "Yes, Kelly, well done, huh?" Confused by his sudden excitement, I noticed the documents in Jack's hand. They were the inheritance papers I had received from the lawyer. "Wait, don't just read those without asking." Shocked and angry at Jack for looking through the documents without permission, I raised my voice at him. However, my mother-in-law, unconcerned, happily chimed in, "Wow, an inheritance of $3 million. Isn't that amazing? Now we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives." Confused, I couldn't understand why my mother-in-law suddenly said that. Then Jack turned serious and continued, "By the way, about this $3 million. I decided that it will be split between me and my mom." It was right after my father's funeral. Jack, having looked at the documents related to the inheritance I was supposed to receive without permission, said to me, "Kelly, don't be too greedy. Oh, now I can finally quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man." "Doddering old man? Are you talking about my dad?" I accidentally said it out loud. "Well, anyway, let's proceed with the inheritance process and get the money into our joint account as soon as possible." Jack continued, Ignoring my confusion over this sudden turn of events, Jack and my mother-in-law were excitedly talking about buying a new car and shopping. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. I was on the verge of exploding. Being burdened with household chores, asked for money, and to top it off, they insulted my father. While holding back my anger, I replied with a forced smile, "Sure, use the money, you and my mother-in-law, please." "As you wish." Hearing this, my mother-in-law, seemingly satisfied, said cheerfully, "That's the spirit, Kelly. Quick to agree. Now make sure you work hard and earn money. I don't want our savings to decrease, so work hard." I just nodded and pretended to listen to her selfish words. Afterward, Jack and my mother-in-law began living as if they had lost their minds, consuming money lavishly. Jack quickly quit his job, and my mother-in-law practically moved in with us, staying at our house constantly. They would leave in the morning, returning with luxury brand items they had splurged on. The 3-star restaurant we went to today wasn't as great as I expected. Yes, it was a bit underwhelming for us, the sophisticated ones. They had conversations as if they had become wealthy celebrities, while dumping all the housework on me as if I were a maid. Jack seemed to think my father's inheritance would come through immediately. He carelessly withdrew money from our joint account, and my savings of $100,000 dwindled rapidly. When I protested their excessive spending, Jack just laughed it off. "What are you talking about? Isn't $3 million coming soon? Then this kind of spending is no big deal," he said. I warned him I've already stopped it, but Jack completely ignored me. Then a month later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly left for a trip to Hawaii. I wasn't invited and was left alone at home. After seeing them off, I decided to take action. About a week later, while I was relaxing at home, I heard a loud knock on the door. Wondering what was happening, I glanced at the intercom monitor and saw Jack and my mother-in-law, both dressed in aloha shirts, standing at the front door. What do you want?" I asked calmly and coldly. With anger, Jack yelled, "What are you even talking about? Why won't the door open?" Seeing Jack and my mother-in-law confused as to why the door wouldn't open, I confidently answered through the intercom, "Well, I changed the locks on the door, so of course it won't open." "What? Why?" "Let's talk over this calmly at the nearby cafe. Please go ahead, I'll join you shortly," I suggested. Jack and his mother, after shouting in front of the entrance, seemingly realized it was futile and soon headed to the cafe. Once I confirmed they had left, I made my way there. Arriving at the cafe, I saw Jack and his mother, who had arrived earlier, waiting in a state of fury. "Hey, what's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now," Jack demanded. "There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house," I calmly told Jack and his mother. Facing a visibly angry Jack, I presented a piece of paper. It was a divorce petition I had already filled out. "Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me?" His mother was equally shocked and bewildered. "Kelly, why has it come to this?" I spoke quietly to the two who were panicking and flustered. "By the way, you've been spending lavishly every day. Are you sure your finances are okay?" Jack retorted vehemently. "What money? Of course it's fine. Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $50,000 in our joint account." "Look, I'll show you right now," Jack said, taking out his smartphone and opening the banking app to check the account. At that moment, his expression changed abruptly. "What? What's this? Why is the money gone?" "It was there just the other day," Jack exclaimed. Hearing his words, his mother also hurriedly looked at her phone, her face showing confusion. I revealed the truth to them as they were panicking, not understanding the situation. "Of course it's gone. I'm divorcing you, so I moved that $50,000 to my account as part of the property division." "What? What do you mean?" Jack's face turned to anger for a moment, but then he smirked as if remembering something. "Fine, I'll divorce you then. Transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split half and half in a divorce, right?" "Well, you might be misunderstanding something," I replied. "Why didn't you know the inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage? doesn't count for property division. There was a moment of silence between us. Then Jack and his mother's expressions changed drastically. Perhaps they truly believed they would receive part of my inheritance. I was just astonished and could only sigh in disbelief. No, that can't be true. That's impossible. Her face turned red with a mix of denial and anger. Please check for yourself, I said mockingly. Jack started frantically searching on his smartphone. It says here property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property. Therefore, it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses. What? Seriously? His mother too looked at the screen in shock. Then Jack approached me, pleading desperately, Kelly, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me? Faced with Jack's plea, I spoke to him clearly and firmly. What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you both treated me. I'm divorcing you. I'll go to court if I have to. Intimidated by my fierce demeanor, which they had never seen before, Jack and his mother shrunk back in fear, whimpering softly. Leaving the two of them dejected, I walked out of the cafe. Later on, Jack and I were able to go through the divorce proceedings without any issues. The $50,000 I had moved from our joint account was recognized as part of the marital property division. Eventually, I managed to get Jack and his mother out of my house. Jack, having already squandered the money from the property division, found himself penniless. Furthermore, he was overwhelmed with bills from the overseas trip and other expenses he had paid for with his credit card, quickly sinking into debt. Jack and his mother had to take on even more debt to make these payments, and they now live in a rundown apartment, working tirelessly every day to pay off their debts. The stark contrast to their former lavish lifestyle has been a huge shock for them. On the other hand, I sold a condo I used to share with Jack. I then moved into the apartment that used to belong to my father. I continued to work as before, but with the inheritance I received from my father, I am living a comfortable life financially. With gratitude to my late father in my heart, I want to start anew and cherish my life ahead. I aim to protect my happiness and spend my days peacefully.
My name is Rebecca, and I'm an artist. Not the kind you see in fancy galleries, but the kind who spends her days in a modest charity center, painting with kids who've seen more than they should. I've always believed that art can heal, and every day I see it happen with these children. I live with my husband, Mark, a sales manager who's always chasing the next big deal, and his mother, Martha, who's never seen a reason to hold back her opinion. Our home is a constant buzz of Mark's phone calls and Martha's TV shows. It's not easy, but it's life. One evening as I was preparing dinner, I decided to share some exciting news. Martha, I entered some of my paintings and the kids' artwork in a city contest. The prize is $100,000. Mark, scrolling through his phone, didn't even look up. That's nice, Rebecca, but let's be real. What are the chances? Martha snorted. With those street kids' drawings, you're dreaming, dear. I try to explain it's not just about the prize. It's about showing what these kids can do, how they express themselves. Mark cut me off. Rebecca, why don't you find a real job, something that actually pays? I sighed, looking at my half-chopped vegetables. It's important to me, Mark. This job, these kids, they matter. Moreover, my salary at the center is quite enough to pay bills and food. Martha waved a dismissive hand. We need real money, Rebecca, not child's play. I finished dinner in silence that night. As I lay in bed, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and disappointment. I believed in my dream, in the magic of art, and maybe, just maybe, the contest could be a new beginning. But at home, it felt like my dreams were nothing but whispers in a storm. I closed my eyes, picturing the colorful, chaotic art room at the center, the place where my heart felt fullest. Tomorrow, I'd go back there, to my little haven of paints and smiles, away from the doubts and the cold reality of my home life. This contest, it was more than a chance for money. It was a chance to prove to myself, and maybe to Mark and Martha, that what I do is valuable, that it has the power to change lives. And with that thought, I drifted off to sleep, dreaming of vibrant colors and the sound of children's laughter. Each day at the Charity Center was a journey into a world where paint and canvas became tools of transformation. There, surrounded by children who had seen the darker side of life, I found my purpose. We painted murals together, walls turned into vibrant stories of hope, each brushstroke a testament to their resilience. I remember one afternoon, a shy little boy named Timmy, who had never picked up a brush before, created a bright sun with rays stretching across the wall. His smile as he stepped back to admire his work was brighter than the sun he painted. Moments like these were my daily reminders of why I did what I did. But at home, the story was starkly different. One evening I returned home, still carrying the joy of the day's achievements, eager to share. I approached Mark and Martha in the living room. "Mark, look at this," I said, showing him a picture of the mural Timmy painted. "This sun, he's never drawn anything before." Mark glanced at the photo and then back at his phone. "That's nice, but it's just a drawing, Rebecca. Kids doodle all the time." Frustration welled up inside me. "It's not just a doodle, Mark. It's a big step for him." "He's been through so much," Martha cut in sharply. "Rebecca, when will you stop playing therapist with paint? It's a child's drawing, nothing more. You need to start living in the real world." Her words felt like a slap. "It's not just playing, Martha. These kids, they find a voice through their art. It's healing for them," I insisted. Mark let out an exasperated sigh. "Healing? What about our mortgage, Rebecca? Your healing isn't going to cover it. You need a real job." I clenched my fists, trying to control the rising tide of anger and hurt. "This is a real job, Mark. It's making a difference." Martha snorted. "Difference? What difference does it make when I'm ashamed to tell my friends where you work?" "You need to wake up and see reality, Rebecca," Mark said firmly. I stood there, words failing me. The gap between my world at the center and my world at home had never felt so vast. In one, I was helping to rebuild lives. In the other, I was constantly reminded of my supposed inadequacy. That night, in the solitude of my studio, I stared at the blank canvas. The harsh words from earlier echoed in my mind, drowning out the laughter and joy of the day. I picked up my brush, and with each stroke, I tried to paint away the hurt, the doubt, and the feeling of being undervalued. The day was winding down at the Charity Center, the walls echoing with the lingering laughter of children. I was cleaning up the paints when my phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Rebecca Thompson speaking," I answered. "Miss Thompson, this is John Harris from the City Arts Council. Congratulations, you've won our citywide art contest. The prize is $100,000. We'll be in touch soon for further details and to discuss an additional opportunity to collaborate with the city." The news hit me like a wave. I won. My voice trembled with a mix of shock and joy. "Yes, indeed, you and the children's work truly stood out," John replied, his voice warm with genuine admiration. I thanked him profusely and hung up. My heart was racing. This was beyond my wildest dreams, a validation of our efforts, of the children's talent, and in some way of my own. I shared the news with the children, and their reaction was heartwarming. Their cheers and claps filled the room with an energy that was almost tangible. This was our collective victory. Later, as the center quieted down, I sat with Lisa, the psychologist, over a cup of tea. I shared my apprehensions about breaking the news at home. Mark and his mother have never really seen the value in what I do. They might just see the money, I confided. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes thoughtful. Why not test their reaction? See if this win changes their attitude. It might reveal their true colors. Her suggestion struck a chord. At home, my work had always been trivialized, its impact constantly undermined. This significant recognition could indeed be the litmus test for their genuine sentiments. I pondered over Lisa's advice as I made my way home. The idea was both unsettling and necessary. If the money swayed their attitudes, it would uncover the uncomfortable truth about their regard for me and my work. Stepping into the house that evening, I decided to hold off on sharing the news just yet. I wanted to observe to plan my approach carefully. Lisa's words echoed in my mind, and I knew she was right. It was time to find out the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. I went to bed that night with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. I was sure of Mark's love, or at least I wanted to be. But Lisa's proposal was an opportunity to see beyond my hopes, to understand the reality of my home life. I agreed with her. It was a test worth taking. That evening, I decided it was time to put my plan into action. Sitting at the dinner table with Mark and Martha, I took a deep breath and said, "I have something to tell you. I won the city art contest. The prize is $100,000. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Mark's fork dropped to his plate with a clatter, and Martha's eyes widened in disbelief. $100,000, Rebecca? That's incredible," Mark exclaimed, his usual indifference replaced by surprising enthusiasm. Martha, who had always been quick with a critical word about my job, suddenly softened. "Dear, that's wonderful news. We're so proud of you," she said, her tone unusually warm. During the meal, Martha fussed over me more than she ever had, offering me the best pieces of chicken and constantly refilling my glass. Mark, too, was uncharacteristically attentive, asking about my artwork and the contest in detail. Their newfound affection was overwhelming, almost suffocating. I noticed them exchanging glances, a silent communication that I couldn't decipher. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and the usual cold, dismissive atmosphere had transformed into one of exaggerated warmth and interest. Later that evening, I stepped out of my room to get a glass of water and overheard a hushed conversation coming from the living room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I quietly moved closer. "We can finally redo the kitchen like we wanted," I heard Martha say in a hushed tone. "And get that new car, we deserve it after all," Mark added, his voice laced with greed. There was a pause before Martha spoke again. "Once we have the money, we can think about, well, Rebecca doesn't really need to stay here anymore, does she?" My heart sank as I listened. Their words were like daggers, revealing their true intentions. The affection at dinner wasn't for me. It was for the money. They were already planning to spend my winnings on themselves and even discussing getting rid of me. I quietly retreated to my room, their words echoing in my ears. The test had revealed their true colors, and they were darker than I had imagined. I lay in bed, a mix of hurt and clarity washing over me. This was not the love and support of a family. It was opportunism, plain and simple. As I closed my eyes, the weight of their betrayal pressed heavily on my heart. The truth was out, and now I had to decide what to do with it. The morning air was tense as I sat down for breakfast with Mark and Martha. The news I was about to break would surely stir the pot, but I was determined to see it through. Casually, I started, "I've decided what to do with the contest money." They both perked up, leaning in with a keen interest that had been absent before. "I'm donating the entire $100,000 to the charity center," I said, watching their faces for reaction. The response was immediate and explosive. "What?" Mark slammed his hand on the table, his face red with anger. "Are you out of your mind, Rebecca?" Martha's voice was shrill, filled with disbelief and outrage. "You're giving away our ticket to a comfortable life, you foolish girl." I remained calm, though their words stung. "It's not our money, it's mine, and those kids need it more than we do," I explained. Mark's voice was laced with scorn. "This is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. You're a fool, Rebecca." Martha's anger bubbled over, her words harsh and unfiltered. "You've always been a disgrace, pretending to be some saint with those street kids. And now this, throwing away a fortune." I tried to explain, "It's not throwing it away. It's helping children who have nothing. but Mark was relentless. "It's not just about the money. You've always been this way, naive and foolish. I should have seen it sooner. I was planning to wait, spend the money first, but now I want a divorce, Rebecca. I can't be with someone who throws away opportunities like this." His words cut through me, but they also brought clarity. This was the reality of our marriage, stripped of any pretense. I looked at them both, my decision firm. If that's how you feel, then it's clear to me now. This marriage, this relationship, was never about us. It was about convenience, about money. Without another word, I stood up and walked away from the table, away from the vitriol and greed. Their shouts and insults followed me, but they no longer had the power to hurt me. I had seen the truth, and it had set me free. The days following my announcement were cold and quiet. The house felt more like a battleground than a home. Mark and Martha avoided me, their disappointment and anger hanging in the air like a thick fog. I was packing some of my belongings in the bedroom when Mark walked in, his face hard, his eyes void of the warmth I once knew. "So, you're really doing this? Throwing away our life for some charity?" he asked, his voice edged with bitterness. "I'm not throwing away our life, Mark. I'm choosing to do what's right with my money," I replied, folding a sweater into my suitcase. He let out a harsh laugh. "Your money? It was supposed to be our ticket out of here, Rebecca, and you just gave it away like it was nothing." "It was never about the money for me, Mark. It's about helping those kids, something you never understood." His frustration boiled over. "You were so blinded by your so-called mission that you can't see the real world. You're a dreamer, Rebecca, and dreamers don't survive." I zipped up my suitcase, feeling the finality of the moment. "Maybe that's the difference between us, Mark. I dream of making a difference while you dream of money." Mark's face tightened. "You know what, Rebecca? Maybe it's better this way. I can't be with someone who doesn't see reality. I want a divorce." The words stung, but they didn't surprise me. "If that's what you want, Mark." He turned to leave, then stopped. "You were always a fool, Rebecca. I just didn't see it until now." After he left the room, I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of his words sinking in the love. I thought the love we had was overshadowed by greed and misunderstanding. As I carried my suitcase downstairs, Martha didn't even look at me. Her disdain was clear, her silence louder than any words. Stepping out of the house, I felt a sense of relief mixed with sorrow. The chapter of my life with Mark and Martha had closed, but ahead of me was a path of my own making. I got into the taxi, glancing back at the house one last time. This wasn't just an end, it was a beginning. A beginning of a life where I could be true to myself and my dreams, free from the chains of greed and misunderstanding. The day to sign the divorce papers arrived with a mix of relief and finality. I walked into the lawyer's office feeling a sense of purpose. Mark was there, and to my surprise, Martha accompanied him. Their presence together was a stark reminder of the life I was leaving behind. As we sat down, Martha didn't waste any time. "You're making a huge mistake, Rebecca, throwing away a marriage over some charity money," she hissed, her tone laced with disdain. "And how do you plan to survive with your tiny salary? You can't even afford a decent place to live." She continued, her words sharp and biting. Mark sat silently, casting contemptuous glances at me. I listened to Martha's tirade, feeling a strange detachment. Their words no longer had the power to hurt me. Once the paperwork was done and it was time to leave, I turned to them, a smile playing on my lips. "You know, I was just testing you," I said, their confused looks fueling my confidence. "Testing us?" Mark echoed, puzzled. "Yes, I wanted to see how you'd react if I said I was donating all the money and you both showed your true colors." Martha's face contorted in confusion. "What are you saying? I'm not giving all the money to charity. That was a lie. And besides, they've given me several lucrative projects. I'm going to be just fine," I said, the satisfaction of revealing the truth making my words strong and clear. The color drained from Mark's face, and Martha's mouth hung open in shock. Their reaction was everything I had expected and more. Mark suddenly found his voice, desperation seeping through. "Rebecca, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean any of it. Can we start over?" I looked at him, once my husband, now a stranger begging for a second chance. "No, Mark, we can't. You showed me who you really are, and I have no desire to be with someone like that." Turning to Martha, I added, "And you, Martha, should know that money isn't everything. When I do my work, it matters more than any luxury you crave." Without another word, I walked out of the office, leaving them behind in their shock and disbelief. I walked into the sunlight, feeling lighter and more confident than I had in years. The divorce was the end of a painful chapter, but it was also the beginning of something new. A chapter where I was the author of my own story, unburdened by others' greed and deception. It was a freedom hard-earned and well-deserved. The months following my separation from Mark and Martha unfolded like a series of vibrant brush strokes on a once blank canvas. I found myself immersed in a new rhythm of life, one that echoed with the sounds of children's laughter at the charity center and the quiet concentration of my work on city projects. My world, once confined to the expectations and criticisms of a household that didn't understand me, had expanded into a realm where my passion for art and my dedication to helping others were not just acknowledged but celebrated. I had rented a small apartment in a quaint part of town. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, a sanctuary where the walls were adorned with my paintings and the cheerful artwork of the children from the center. Each piece told a story, a reminder of the journey I had embarked on and the lives that had intertwined with mine. The decision to donate half of my prize money to the charity center had set a series of unexpected events in motion. The local newspapers and community blogs picked up the story, intrigued by the artist who chose charity over personal gain. My phone began ringing with inquiries and offers. Local gallery owners, once indifferent, were now eager to showcase my work. My paintings, which had been a source of solace in my darkest times, were now being admired in well-lit galleries, appreciated by people who saw in them the same hope and beauty that I did. The city projects, too, brought a newfound recognition. I was commissioned to design murals for public spaces, transforming bland walls into tapestries of color and life. Each project was a new adventure, an opportunity to leave a mark on the city that had become my larger canvas. In the midst of this newfound success, I occasionally received messages from Mark. His texts, laden with apologies and pleas for a second chance, were a stark reminder of the life I had left behind. I read them sometimes with a mocking smile, but mostly with a sense of detachment. The pain he had caused was a part of my past, a chapter that had closed the day I walked out of that house. His words, once capable of cutting me deeply, now seemed superficial, like ripples on the surface of a lake that could not disturb its depths. Evenings in my apartment were a time of reflection and creativity. I would often sit by the window, a cup of tea in hand, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the twists and turns my life had taken. The betrayal and hurt had been a crucible, burning away the illusions and leaving behind a clarity of purpose. I realized I had found strength in my vulnerability, courage in facing the unknown, and an unshakable belief in the power of art to heal and transform. On weekends, I conducted art workshops at the charity center. The children, each with their own story of resilience, continued to be my greatest inspiration. We painted together, our collective imagination turning blank canvases into expressions of joy, pain, and hope. I saw in their eyes the reflection of my own journey, a testament to the healing power of art. As the city embraced my work, my personal life too began to flourish in new ways. I made friends in the art community, a group of eclectic and supportive individuals who appreciated me for who I was. We shared stories, laughed, and dreamed together. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of belonging. One evening, as I finished a painting for an upcoming exhibition, I stepped back to take it all in. The vibrant colors on the canvas, the sense of accomplishment, the peace that filled my heart. It was a far cry from the days of doubt and belittlement. I had emerged from the shadows of a stifling relationship into the light of self-discovery and fulfillment. As I closed the lights that night and settled into bed, I thought about the future. It was unwritten, full of unknowns, but I was no longer afraid. I had weathered the storm and found my rainbow on the other side. My story was one of transformation, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is the potential for a masterpiece. And I was just getting started.